Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Sapna Dadwal. This is lecture 7 of OB, Organizational Behavior. I'm working as a professor in the Department of Management at St. Andrews Institute of Technology and Management. This is lecture 7, again I'm telling you of OB, Organizational Behavior. The topic I'm going to cover in this lecture are, I'm going to cover values, types of values, development of values. Then I'm going to cover perception, definition of perception, factors influencing perception, nature, misperceptions. Then I'm going to cover in this learning, the topic learning, definition, nature, factor, and the factors influencing learning. So I'm going to cover in this lecture values, perceptions, and learning. 3 topics I'm going to cover in this lecture number 7 of OB. So I'm starting with values first. So values are encompassing concept. They are the core of personality and therefore are a powerful though silent force affecting behavior. Values are so embedded that they can be inferred from people's behavior and their expressed attitudes. Values have an important influence on the attitude, perception, needs and motive of people at work. That is why they are important to study of organizational behavior. Values are one of the sources of individual differences. Values are general beliefs signed with moral flavor, containing an individual judgment, ideas about what is good, right or desirable. In other words, values are the on the basis of value a person can say this is right, this is wrong, etc. Then values are at the core of personality and therefore are powerful though silent force affecting behavior. Values are so embedded that they can be inferred from people's behavior and their expressed attitude. Values have an important influence on attitude, perception, motive. I have already covered this. Then values are general belief signed with moral flavor, containing an individual judgment, ideas about what is good and right. In the words of Rokeach, value is a specific mode of conduct or and state of existence, is personally or socially preferable to an opposite or converse mode of conduct or end state of existence. Now, features of values. So it is very clear from the above definition what values are. Values are basic. Now I'm starting with features. Values are basic convictions that give as a sense of right and wrong and good and bad. Then values forms basis for ethical behavior. An individual may have numerous values. So it doesn't mean individuals have only one value. It may have numerous values. Then values are learned. These changes as individuals grow and mature. As values changes, the behavior of individual changes too. Now, types of values. The values can be divided into 2 broad categories. First one is terminal values. The second one is instrumental values. Terminal values are the goals in life that are desirable state of existence. For example, family, security, freedom, equality, etc. Whereas instrumental values are core values, permanent in nature, comprise personal characteristics and character traits. It refers to preferable modes of behavior and include values like honesty, sincerity, ambition, etc. Then comes development of values or sources of values. This is the next topic of values. The first one is family factors, a significant factor influencing the process of socialization of an individual is the role of family. A lot of values we learn from individuals, from their families and friends. Then social factors. Social has a major role in development of values in children. Though through discipline, the children's discipline in the school, the children learn desirable behaviors, interaction with teachers, other staff members in the educational institute. A child inculcate values which are very important in his life. Now, third is personal factors. Personal attributes such as intelligence, ability, appearance, education level of the person determine his level of education. Then values and organizational behavior. Values affect behavior because value affects employees' views. What is right, what is wrong. So the understanding value is important for organization. Values serves as a foundation for attitudes. Individuals hold their own interpretation of right and wrong just because of values only. So values affect individuals' attitudes and behavior. Re-examining of individuals' established value is a challenge, poses a challenge to management and organization. Now the next topic is perception. Perception is the function of information processed through any or all of the five senses, that is sight, touch, taste, hearing and smell. Perception may be defined as process by which people select, organize and interpret information from their environment. In the words of Luthans Fred, the perception is an active psychological process by which individuals organize and interpret their sensory impressions in order to give meaning to their environment. So according to Keith Davis, perception is a process of receiving, selecting, organizing, interpreting, checking and reacting to sensory stimuli or data so as to form a meaningful and coherent picture of the world. Now these are the above questions which are related to the above discussed topic. Now I am continuing with this lecture. Now, as we have already started perception, perception refers to manner in which a person experiences the world. Now, nature of perception. Perception is a psychological process. Perception is subjective process. Perception is an intellectual process. Then comes perceptual process. Perception is the process through which people select, organize and interpret information from the environment. So it is the culmination of complex process by which an individual selectively absorbs the stimuli in the environment, organize the perceived information and subsequently interpret the meaning of the events that take place in it. So the following is the process of perception. The first is input. There are number of stimuli are constantly confronting people in the form of information, object, event, people in the environment. So stimuli, these are the stimuli which are there in the environment. So first, these stimuli confront people which are there in the environment. Second is perceptual mechanism. Perceptual, so it involves three processes of selection, organization and interpretation of the stimuli in the environment. So perception mechanism is whatever information, whatever stimuli there are in the environment, they were called as inputs. First, for example, in the first stage, a human being or an individual has got inputs in the form of object, event and people from the environment. The second is what he will select the information from those inputs, those stimuli, those object, event and people. Then he will organize the information and interpret the information. This is called as perceptual mechanism. Then is output. Perceptual output denotes the transformation of perceptual inputs via thoughtput or mechanism process. So this include perceiver's attitude, opinion, feeling, values, etc. So there are three processes in perceptual process. First, individual take out inputs from the environment in the form of information object. Second is perceptual mechanism. He take the information, then he's out of information taken in the form of input. In the second process, he select the information, organize and interpret. And the third is output. Output may be an attitude or maybe his perception. So output is his perception or his interpretation of object. Perception is interpretation of object on the basis of information he has taken from the environment. So whenever he perceives something, when he makes his perception about any product or about any object, about any person, about any commodity, that is output. That is perceptual output. Now, next topic is factor influencing perceptions. First is characteristics of the perceiver. There are three categories, three factors which influences the perception. First is characteristics of perceiver. Second is characteristics of perceived. Third is characteristics of situation. I'm starting with first, that is characteristics of perceiver. Perceiver is a person who's perceiving it, who's taking inputs, or who's then first is need and motive. Need and motive of the perceiver. If perceiver have high need for achievement, then he will try to exploit every resource in the environment. So perception depends on the need and motive of the perceiver. Then second is self-concept. Perceiver's self-concept or his thinking about himself also depends, also makes his perception. So perceiver's self-concept precise them. This influences how perceives others and situation. If a person is a positive, he'll always think positive about others. The third is perceiver's past experience with situation also determines his perception. Then perceiver's belief also influences the perception. Perceiver's expectations also influences the perception of perceivers. What he's expecting out of that situation, that also influences the perception. Then perceiver's current psychological state. In what stage he is there? He's positive, he's negative, he's happy, he's sad. This current psychological state also affects the perception. Now, second category is characteristics of perceived. Perceived means perceived means we are making perception of any object or any person, that is called as perceived. Then the larger the size of the object, the more likely it will be noticed. We have seen if a person is of person is on high post, then he is likely to be noticed more. If the size of the object, if a perceiver is going to make a perception about the object, larger the size of the object, the more likely it will be noticed, and the perception about that object is going to be made by the perceiver. Then comes intensity. The brighter, louder, more colorful object are more noticed. Then is contrast like black and white. If the contrast is very catchy to the eyes, then it is more noticeable to the perceiver. Then a repeated message is more likely to be perceived than a single message. Then comes the third category, that is characteristics of a situation. The surrounding environment element influences the perception of people. So situations characteristics also, whether situation is good, bad, that so also depends. The perception depends upon the characteristics of situation to the perceiver. Now the next topic is misperception for or perceptual errors. For example, stereotyping. Stereotyping is a tendency to perceive an individual as belonging to a single class or category. So whenever a person, so it is a misperception. When a person is, when a perceiver perceives everyone belonging to a single class or single category, then it is called as stereotyping. So every person cannot belong to a single category or it can a single class. So it is a misperception on the part of perceiver. Then comes halo effect. Under halo effect, the person is perceived on the basis of one trait, such as intelligence, sociability, or cooperativeness, or intelligence, or it may be any character. So whatever person or object that is perceived on the basis of only one trait. So this is a perception error. You cannot make perception on the basis of one error. A person may be an intelligent, but he may have other faults also. It may be possible a person is not intelligent, but he is a good performer. Then third is impressions. Impressions. Sometimes people form impressions about others on the first sight, and the impression leads to perception distortion. Then projection. It means attributing one's own feeling to someone else. Projection may distort perception. Then comes attribution. It refers how an individual explains the cause of one's own or another's behavior. It distorts the perception. Then selective perception. People tend to perceive as per their need, motive, and trust. Selective perception is the tendency to single out those aspects of a person or situation that confirm perceivers' belief, values, etc. Then come inference. Inference is a tendency on the part of some people to judge others on limited information. Without getting proper information, if we are judging someone and making perception out of that information, that is a misperception. That is a perceptual error. Next topic is importance of perception. It is very important for the managers. This perception topic is very important for the manager, as it is very important in understanding human behavior. It helps in understanding human behavior. If people behave on the basis of their perception, their behavior can be changed within time period before it is causing any damage to the organization or to the people. With the help of perception, the need of various people can be determined. Perception is very important to manager as it avoid errors. Now comes learning. Learning, next topic is learning. Learning can be defined as a permanent change in behavior through education and training, practice, and experience. So it is very clear that learning is always permanent. So learning is, it must be understood that learning itself is not observable, but only the change in behavior is observable. That is the direct result of process of learning. So in the words of Michel, learning is the process by which new behaviors are acquired. It is generally agreed that learning involves changes in behavior, practicing a new behavior and establish a permanency in change. So learning means whenever a behavior is changed, it is generally permanent change. Learning is a permanent change in the behavior of people. Now, nature of learning. Learning involves change in behavior. Change in behavior must be relatively permanent. Change must be based on some experience, practice, or training. The practice or experience must be reinforced for learning to occur. So, learning is reflected behavior. Now, factors affecting learning. Since learning is acquired process, it is affected by several factors. These factors are as follows. First is motivation. Learning. Learner's motivation is one of the major conditions for learning. Motivation is something that moves a person to action. So this course of action include learning too. So unless a person is not motivated, internally motivated to learn something new, you cannot make him learn. So motivation is important factor. Then mental setup. Mental set refers to perception for an action. If a person is prepared to learn, only then he can learn. Third is nature of learning material. Nature of learning material affects the learning. It should be easy to understand and learn. If a learning material is easy to understand, then it will help the learner in learning. Then practice. Practice is very basic external condition of learning and affects all types of learning. Unless and until a person will not practice and to learn, or will practice daily to learn, he will not learn. Then comes environment. Environment in which learning process occurs affects the learning. Environmental factors can either strengthen or weaken the ability to learn. So environment is very important for learning. Environment should be such that it should help in learning. It should help the people in learning new things. So these are the questions now which are related to the above topics. If any query is there, please do contact me. I know these slides are not clear, but I'm sure I'll make it sure the next lecture will be clear. Thank you so much. If any query is there regarding which slides are not clear, you can always contact me. Thank you so much.